You're listening to Living Free, your podcast for a life full of freedom and magic. I'm your host, Tanya Hirsch, and I hope that every time you listen, you feel a little bit more inspired to follow your intuition and to create a life beyond your wildest dreams. Welcome back to the Living Free podcast. Today I have my personal business mentor, Kristina Parks, on the podcast. She is a business and leadership mentor who helps entrepreneurs, leaders, and visionaries to create a heart-centered business and to sell out their offers on social media so they can create wealth, abundance, and achieve true freedom. She has evolved into a 6-figure coaching and mentorship brand, helping women all over the world to own their personal power and scale their businesses through feminine leadership. And it's her mission to show women the power of self-worth, self-expression, authenticity, vulnerability, to become successful leaders in their lives and business. And I feel the reason why I chose her so spontaneously and intuitively as my mentor is because she really speaks to the soul of people. She knows how to create connection between two souls, and that's something I learned from her, and I'm deeply grateful. And in today's episode, she shares her personal story that is so unique, how she transitioned from being a starving artist, thinking she would live the life of her dreams, being an opera singer, and then finding that this is actually was in alignment anymore, and how she transitioned from hitting rock bottom to establishing a 6-figure brand, and all the things she had to navigate through when it came to self-worth and inner confidence and self-love, and how she radiates that now, and how she created that business from overflow and abundance and from this mindset of true self-love. And I can't wait for you to listen to this episode. Let us know how it resonated with you, and let's welcome Kristina Parks to the podcast. I'm so excited, Kristina. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So the first question I would like to ask you is, what does living free mean to you right now in this moment?
Well, first of all, I love that question. And living free, I almost feel like at this very moment, I feel very free, like being on this Soul Naked podcast. I'm like, this physically feels really, really free. But I would also say that freedom to me is a life where you get to decide. You get to decide who you are. And you get to decide what you're going to do with your life, when you are going to do it, and how you're going to do it. And it's a liberation of all things, right? So we have like financial liberation, we have like sexual liberation, we have freedom in our work and what we do, right? And what we decide to do. And so I think that what really stands out the biggest for me in my life was finding a career path, because my purpose, my why has always been really, really big. Like I always wanted to do something on a big scale. I always wanted to do something extraordinary. And I wanted to have that sense of freedom of I can set my own hours. I don't have to ask for time off. I don't have to, like, I can kind of curate my life, like almost like curate this lifestyle that I want to live. And so I didn't want to give up. And sometimes, as you know, my career path before, like I had that one aspect of which I'm sure we'll talk about, but I was trained to be a professional opera singer, and I had that first aspect of it being the bigger why, the purpose. Like it was like this, I felt like I was really making a difference when I sang, and people would like cry and like, they would tell me, oh my gosh, you're so talented. This is amazing. Right. Like I just felt like when I was on stage, I was like, I was really connecting with other people and making a difference in their lives, but then there was that aspect of where I really felt so stuck. I felt so stuck, like, and I felt really stagnant, and I just didn't see a clear path that would work for me in the life that I really, really wanted, that really like worked for my values, like what I see for my future. And so freedom to me means not to settle, right? Like knowing that you can have it all. You can have all of those things. You can have the impact. You can have the wealth, right? Like the experiences, wealth of experiences is like so big for me, just to be able to see the world and experience the world, and all the beautiful things that basically the world has to offer, like the sights and, the food, all of it, right? Like that's so big for me. And like friendships and and of course, like relationships, that's really big for me, to be able to cultivate the relationships in my life with my family, with my husband, right? Like starting a family, like that's something that's important to me. So all of these things that I think that are really, really meaningful to me, freedom is being able to go all in on them, right? Not having to settle.
Yes, I love that so much. And I think that's also what draw me to you, that you really create this connection to people. Like when I saw just one black and white typed story of you, and it spoke directly to my soul, and I didn't even know you, right? And I was like, oh, this is exactly what I want. And it's so beautiful to witness that you have the art of speaking to people's souls, and that's something I learned from you and that I'm really grateful for. So take us back into Kristina's life a few years back, when you decided you want something different, even if this was fulfilling for a part of your journey and it was really part of your purpose. You felt that's not it, and you don't allow to settle. You chose a different path.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, a few years back, we'll take it back to around, 2018. I had just graduated from, I got a master's degree at a music conservatory in New York City. And I also got this small degree after that, which was like a professional type degree. But anyway, so I was there for 3 years. And throughout that time, I had done some performances. I was spending summers in different cities and singing, and doing gigs and things here and there. During my time there, though, I would say I wasn't always happy. There was like my up and down moments. I had an amazing time, I would say, like overall, where I got to see so many different cities. Like I got to live in New York City, which was amazing. I got to travel abroad and sing in so many different amazing places, Italy and Vienna and all these places in Europe. And so overall, the experience was good, but there was always like that part was missing for me. Like I didn't feel good enough. I didn't particularly feel safe in the career that I was in, because I just didn't see where it was going to end. I didn't see, at least I didn't have, it's not that I needed to know like, oh, this needs to happen, but I was kind of like, I don't know if I see myself doing this, I guess I could say. Like, every option I kind of thought of, I was like, I don't know. It didn't feel right. So, and that kind of came after it. I was always the kind of person, I just kind of went with the flow. I was like, I'm really good at this, so I'm going to keep going and see where I go. And the thing that I loved of what you said, though, was that at the time, it was something that was right for me, because had I not seen it through, I would have always looked back and said, oh, like, why didn't I try, to be a professional singer, because I think that's kind of like, if you have a musical talent, it's kind of like the dream, right? To be able to get paid for your gifts. And so I know that all the experiences and all the things I learned, really, really have made me the person I am today. But at the time, it was really hard to see that. So once I had graduated, I actually went through a very, very difficult time in my life where it was really me trying to find who I was and what I really, really wanted to do. And it was hard because I had graduated and I ended up moving back home for a little bit of time. And I was planning on moving back to New York, but I moved back to Chicago. And in that time, I think I had done the starving artist lifestyle, and it was like scraping by, living in like basements in New York City. It just was because I was a student, I wasn't making any money, right? So it's like, I was like, you know what? I want to see what it's like to make consistent money, right? So I ended up getting a job at a music store. It was like a piano store. So I was still kind of in the realm of everything. But during that time, I was still performing, but I had this moment. It was like a complete like rock bottom moment. It was after like this performance that did not go the way that I wanted it to go. And before that, I was just dealing with a lot of mental health issues because I felt so lost. I had felt that I had spent all of this time putting time, energy, everything into this career that I no longer was like feeling this super passionate about. And I no longer saw myself doing all of these things. Like, it no longer was making me happy. In fact, it was making me extremely unhappy because I felt so much pressure. I felt so much pressure. And my anxiety was just at an all-time high. And, I enjoyed working at the piano store for a short amount of time because I was like, oh, like, this is what it feels like to make money, and I think like, it was like that first time where I was consistently getting a paycheck. Like, that had never really happened to me. So I was like, oh my gosh, this feels great. But then after a while, I started really like, the cracks of the foundation started to break. And I really kind of saw the company for what it was. The nice faces kind of drifted away, and it was really, really toxic management. And it trickled all the way from the top to the bottom. And of course, got to me. And it was, I was having to, of course I was asking for time off, but I was like being denied time off. And this, partly had to do with COVID as well. COVID started coming on at this point. So everything was changing, but there was just so many things that were kind of up in the air. So she just wouldn't even let me go on a vacation with my family. I mean, I ended up going, but it was this whole stressful process. And I was like, I never want to like deal with this again. I went in there, asked for a raise, and it was just kind of like swept under the rug. I just felt like completely dismissed. And so then by the time I'm like going through all of this, wondering like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? Like, this is not where my soul wants to be. I don't want to be like, oh, and by the way, I was working in like in this back closet, basically. Like, it's actually really comical. Like, my office was basically like in this, it wasn't even really an office. It was like a closet, and they just kind of put a desk in there. And so it was just like, and I was working by myself. There was a few people up front that would sell the retail, but like, I was just working by myself in this back office all day. So like, I'm over here just like totally wasting away, it feels like. And then on the other hand, I'm doing these gigs and I'm not enjoying it at all. I'm honestly hating it because I wasn't feeling good about myself. And, when you sing, it's like an expression of who you are. And when you're not doing well, you really can't sing. So I did not sing well. And my whole world just came crashing down. I was just like, where am I going with my life? What am I doing? I was dealing with health issues. I was, seeing my friends back in Chicago, like they all had been like living their lives, building things. And it felt like I almost had taken a step back after college. And it was like kind of looking at through the lens of comparison. So that in a nutshell, was probably one of the hardest times of my life, right? Of course, there's like deeper details to that, but like really it was just kind of a quarter life crisis, I guess you could say, of just me being like, what, this is not what I want. I'm so unhappy right now. Like it's almost like unbearable for me. And it was so hard. And so I was living with my parents at that time, and I really did have the time to heal. Like, again, like I said, it wasn't only internally, like physically, I wasn't well either, because a lot of the time when I was in grad school, a way for that I could feel like in control and also feel good about myself was like my appearance. So I really worked out too hard, I guess you could say. Like I overworked myself, not only in school, but like physically, I would overwork myself. So my body really started shutting down. Like my organs were like not right, because I lost my period. So I had amenorrhea for like over a year. I was bloating all the time because my my digestive system was kind of shutting down, like everything just felt like it was shutting down. And I was like, I need to heal. I really need to take this time to step back and heal. So I did take about a year where I didn't really go out much. I hung out, like I said, a lot with my parents. And I didn't drink a lot. I really kind of was like, I'm just using this time to like really start to try to feel better, right? Get my mind back, get my health back to a good place. And eventually, I started getting a little bit better and better and better, to the point where I moved out of my parents eventually, and moved into the city. And this is kind of where the story goes into entrepreneurship. But I guess what I can say is that I think looking at during the time, it was just so painful, just to be in that state of just. And just to put it a little bit of perspective for you too, is I'm a perfectionist, right? Like I'm a high achieving woman. So just a high achieving human being. And I put a lot of my own self-worth on my accomplishments and what I looked like and appeared on the outside. So once I kind of stopped singing and I moved home, it was like the facade started crumbling, and it was like, wait, I can't fake being happy. I can't fake being this like perfect person, right? Like I'm at this point in my life where I'm so unhappy. Like I desire to be in a relationship. I also had gotten out of a relationship. So I was like single, and I was like lonely and all these things. I'm like, I felt like I had nothing going for me. Like, even though I like, looking back, I can see like positive aspects, but in my brain, it was like I was a complete failure. It was like I was a complete failure. So it's like, that is why my brand today, my business and my message, the movement that I'm leading is to help women find their worth, their true sense of self-worth, which is not on the external self. It's like finding worth and wealth from the inside out, right? Because that is something that was like a huge revelation to me when I started really embodying this, and my life completely changed.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And when you go back to this moment where you realize you put a lot of your self-worth and your confidence and everything outside of you, how did you come back? How did you heal that to really embody that from the inside? Like, what had to shift inside of you to find that from within and not giving it away all the time?
Yeah, I think it was, like I said, that, well, the year of healing that I had, I was going to therapy. I was really working on myself. I was listening to like a lot of, self-help books and things of that nature, really. And so this is when I started really learning about this world, because it's like, again, I was really just my whole focus from like a lot of my life was like this music career, right? So it's like I started to understand how the brain works and how the mind works, and like and what I was doing, because I really didn't know why I felt so bad. I mean, I knew why I felt bad, but I was like, why is it so hard for me? Why does this feel so hard? Everything just felt so hard. And I started to realize the patterns that I was continuously doing to myself, right? The mindset patterns that kind of kept coming up and coming up and coming up, and how that is what led me to essentially underfeed myself, overwork out, because I thought that the way that I looked on the outside was far more important than like how I felt on the inside. Right. And I wasn't listening to who I was. And so I think it literally took actually like me hitting rock bottom, when they like big change happens a lot when we like actually are forced to change. I was actually forced to change. Like it was almost like against my will. Like I was like, no, like you have to change. Like you can't work out anymore. You can't work out like you were working out before, because your body's literally shutting down. Like you can't keep doing the things you were doing in with your career, because it literally was bringing me to a point where I was so stressed, like I was so anxious, like I would have panic attacks. Like that was how I felt at the end of my singing career. So I was like, can't really do that anymore. Like it's not making me happy. It's actually making me feel terrible. Right. So I was almost like at that point where I was forced to. And then the thing for me, which was like, I always remember this kind of moment, was once that was all kind of said and done, and there was a moment. So at this point, I had moved out of my parents' place, and it was before I started my business, but I had it was a moment where I was walking down the street, and I just remember thinking like it was just a decision. And that's why I used to hate when people said like you just decide and then it like everything happens for you. And it's not that easy, because there's so many things leading up to that decision. It's not like, but I do remember this one moment where it was like an energetic shift within me. I think that's the key. Like it wasn't just a cognitive decision. Like I actually felt differently about myself. And I said, I actually am ready. Like I'm ready to be happy, and I'm ready to date. And the reason why this is so important is because I think, again, I used to kind of always be like, oh, I'm not skinny enough. I need to like wait for this moment. Oh, like I'm not ready, or I need to have this kind of job, or like I won't be able to attract the guy that I want, kind of thing. And I think, again, it was like this moment where I was like, wait, hold on, like I'm awesome, I'm ready, like I'm beautiful, like I just felt differently about myself. And it like I think it was just declaring that, like that shift, and I decided I'm ready, I'm okay, like I'm doing it. So that is when I actually, not too long after that, I met my husband. And like he was like the guy of my dreams, still is, but I'm just saying at that moment I saw him on a dating app, and like we've been together ever since. Like got engaged after 8 months of dating. Like it was this beautiful thing that blossomed. But it just goes to show how powerful those decisions, that we are enough, that we are ready. So I think about that a lot. I do. I think about that a lot. I think about that with my business, and like, it was the same energy actually with my business that I had. And that's why I think it's so important, because, fast forward a little bit, the pandemic happens, right? And I'm laid off from my job at the piano store. Okay. So I was working there, and part of me was stressed, because I was like, what am I going to do? I'm not ready to not have a job. But part of me was like, well, I didn't want to work there anymore anyway. It was getting very toxic. And especially like, anxiety, stress were high during that time when the pandemic started setting in. So of course the whole company's like it feels like it's going up in flames. But anyway, so I'm like, all right, this kind of feels like a good out anyway. So I'm like laid off from that. Of course, too, the whole like an entertainment industry was shut down anyway. So it's not like that was an option. Like there was no live performances anywhere. I mean, everyone was out of work essentially in that regard. So I'm thinking like, okay, what the hell am I going to do? Like it was another one of those moments where I'm like, what am I doing? You know, it just hit me again. And at this point again, I was still healing. Of course, I think we're all always going to be on a healing journey. I think throughout our entire lives, there's never a point where I'm like, I'm completely perfectly healed, you know, like, no, like we're always works in progress, of course. But, you know, this was after I had been living outside of my parents' house for a little bit. And I think that kind of marks a point for me where things started to turn, I guess you could say. But anyway, it kind of felt like, oh my God, I'm back to square one. Kind of sad. But so I applied to a bunch of jobs, right? So I was applying. And of course, during the pandemic, like, you know, it's hard to get a job anyway, in general. But I think for me, I felt like with my unconventional background, it kind of made it even a step further. And that kind of made me angry but I think it was like a good type of anger, you know, it was like that, like, I know I'm amazing, like kind of feeling of like, I know that any job basically that someone could give me, I could figure it out. Like I know I'm resourceful. Like I know who I am. Like I know I've always been a great student. I've always been really, really ambitious. Right. So I was like, these people are just kind of passing over me. And I'm like, like this just like, I was like, I want you guys to see past, you know, just the girl with the music degree. Like I am such a valuable asset. Like, you know, like I that confidence was there. And so once I saw that you could basically start your own business online and make a lot of money, I was like, wait, oh yeah, I can totally do this. Like it was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that. Like I didn't even think twice. I was like, the minute I saw it, I basically was like, wait, what is this? And like that month, I think I launched my business. Like wow. I did not waste any time. I literally was like, I'm doing it. And so what I did, like, again, I think I saw this TikTok in September. Do you watch TikTok?
It's brilliant. Right. 30 seconds moments.
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, give me on a bad day and I'll be scrolling a lot, but you know, yeah. So I totally like saw this TikTok and I think a lot of people kind of like caught on during this time because people were laid off. But anyway, this girl, she was talking about how she became a service provider. And so I was, you know, I just was like, I'm going to be a virtual assistant. Like I was doing assistant type an assistant type role in my last job. So like, how can this will be great, you know? And actually, weirdly enough, again, it was that like energetic decision of like, I'm ready. It was every time like, I'm ready. I talked to one of my friends and she had this like online health coaching business, you know, for a really long time. And I hadn't talked to her. She was a friend from high school. And we just had, for whatever reason, it was not even related to the business, but we just started talking. And I was like, you know, I think I'm starting a business. Like I'm saying this to you because I'm doing it. Like I saw this thing and and she's like, oh my God, you are? Like, I could totally like use you. I want to hire you. And I was like, what? Okay. Right? So like before I basically even started, I had her as a client. So I started my social media management business almost 2 years ago. I started in October of 2020. And I mean, from then it just kind of blew up. And then you know, the whole conversation of how I got to where I am today is different, but I guess I could say like, you know, to answer your question, I know I'm a little long-winded here, but it's like, it really was these weird kind of all-knowing energetic decisions. Like it was a mixture of like me saying like, I think it was like an intuitive hit of being like, oh yeah, this is for me, or like, oh yeah, I'm ready, or like, yeah, I'm worthy, like, and then just trusting in that and like believing in myself, which I haven't, like, again, I haven't always had like that confidence. It's not like, that was always normal for me. In fact, like I doubted myself completely in many situations, but I think that I allowed myself to actually remember who I am.
Mm.
And every time I allow myself to do that, amazing things have happened.
Mm. So true. I love that. And it's also, I feel as soon as we really claim our desires, as soon as we really say, I deserve more, I desire more, and not be like, I want to be rich, but I don't believe in it anyway, so I'm not doing anything. But if it happens, I'm here for it. But I already know that it's not gonna happen. That's not what attracts that, right? But if you become an energetic match by saying, I see my worth, I feel my worth, and I know I'm capable of so much more. That's when people can feel your energy, and that's when they get drawn to you, and that's why you matched your reality matched what you were feeling inside. So
Yes.
I'm curious if you have a client, someone comes to you, or if someone's listening and they're like, oh my God, that's me. I'm doubting myself so much. And I know I'm here for more, but somehow I don't see the results yet. And I would love to feel more confident in myself. Do you have any tips what they can do to create this shift? Because it's nothing from the mind, right? It's something that happens in your inner world, that happens in your energy. What they can do or be, they can embody to, yeah, to create a shift.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, there's yeah. So it's what I like to talk about a lot too with my clients is like, it's this deep identity work. And of course, what's interesting about this is that it's something that can happen within an instant, or it's something that needs to be continuously worked on, over and over and over. And there's no like right or wrong way to achieve everything that you want to achieve, right? If it's not, I think there's like a misconception that like one day you're just going to wake up and every day after that it's going to be completely different, which is not true. I mean, of course, like I'm pinpointing moments where I'm like, wow, I really saw the shift. But of course, every day there's still that moment of doubt, there's still things that can come up, and that's okay. So that's completely normal is what I'll say first and foremost. But and then with that identity work is it's that it goes deeper than just like the mindset, right? It's like it's deeper than just knowing these concepts. It's actually applying them on a full, like almost like mentally and physically, right? So it becomes like a different way of being, right? So I would say that the top thing that I would really work on is that concept of self. It's like, where do you notice the places that you really doubt yourself? Like, and it can be in multiple areas of life, like, or a certain area more than others. Like, is it your love life? Because the reason why it's kind of interesting to talk about relationships is because it really does go very hand in hand with business as well. Like, because the way that you see yourself is kind of the love you're going to attract, or like the wealth you're going to attract, right? The way you see the world, right? So it's like, but at first I really would focus on that like concept of self. What, where, what is coming up for you when you say like, I want this, right? And I'm going to do it. Like, what is the first thought in your head? Like, at what point do you start like doubting the process, or do you start giving excuses, or do you start saying like, this isn't possible because, right? Like, and pinpoint, right? Pinpoint those stories that keep kind of come up. Especially if you're in like a pattern of like, it's just constant doubt, right? And you're like, I really, really want to change, but I always go back to square one. And then I would say, yeah, like this is something definitely to dive into and see like, what is the dominant story that's playing right now that is keeping you in that pattern? And like, can you extract that and start to look at it from a really, really objective place, like a really, really a true place, especially if it's about who you are. It's like, if you have a story that's been going on in your head that, or I've heard since childhood that I am, or I never thought that I could have this because, and it's like, is that actually true? Like, did somebody say, is this a law that you cannot have this thing, right? Like, sometimes we have to think of it from that bigger, higher place. And it's like, wait, actually, I've been like thinking this thought for my entire life, and it actually doesn't have true merit. Like, it actually, there's really no truth behind it, but it's just something I've taken on for so long that I've made it a part of who I am. And then it's like, that's where we start switching. That's where we can start to make magic. It's like, oh, wow. Like, and Tanya, we've done one of these kind of things on one of our calls. And I remember we kind of uncovered something that was like, kind of like a deep belief. And you were like, oh my God, like that's something I've been carrying. And I think what it is just kind of beginning to open yourself up to more possibilities. Like, that's how it starts. It's like that, even just that spark of excitement, because it's really, really hard to go from like a really, really negative place and just be like, okay, everything's done. It's changed, right? Like, it's okay to, even get back to a place of neutrality is something that I always say. Even if it's like, if you're in that dark place, it's like, what if you just got to a place where you're okay? Right? Like, you're maybe like, it's not, I hate myself. It's, I'm okay. Like, I'm okay, and getting yourself to that place of neutrality, because then you can start to go somewhere, right? Then we're out of lack, right? We want to get out of like this lack, because that just leads, you deeper and deeper down. So it's like, at least we can get to a neutral place, something that is really, really true. Even if it's like one thing that I like about myself is my teeth, or something. Just thinking, like, if you're like, okay, I know objectively I've always liked my eyelashes. Okay, good. Now we're starting to like really kind of even out the scales here. And it's like, sometimes it's that littlest opening that we can get ourselves into that can get us into alignment with where we want to be. That is how we get there. I think too many people stop themselves from making a major change or getting to what they want because they are overwhelmed by like the amount they have to accomplish. Or, it's like, if you say, I'm going to completely change my life, like, I'm going to lose all of this weight and I'm going to walk 10,000 steps and I'm going to eat this huge meal, or I'm going to eat, healthy meals. And it's like, that is so many things and it's completely overwhelming. And it's like, no wonder that your body's like, it was way better before when we were just hanging out on the couch, like, because your body is so used to, the body doesn't want to change. Even if you're in a bad situation, your body doesn't want, your mind wants to stay where it's at. That's what it knows. Right. So I would say start small, like, start small, baby steps, and compounding that, it's like from more to more to more to more, will make a huge, huge change.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I feel if we always had this doubt and always had this belief about ourselves, then we don't really question it. We just think that's our reality, that it's not possible for us. And especially if we have, I call it the power of osmosis, if we have people around that also just stay where they are and they don't have a growth mindset and they grow beyond themselves. And that's why these mentorship programs, if you have a mentor that can see your blind spots, it's like, is this really the truth?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then to have more. Yeah. This was really a game changer, to do it differently than you've done it your whole life, because that kept you in that place. And then suddenly you have someone who asks one question and you're like, I never thought about that. What if this is really not the truth? Maybe you're right. And I just told myself this story over and over, that I thought I'm stuck in this cage, but actually there's a door and I can open this cage and I can become a completely new person. Like I really believe we can change, we can choose who we want to be in this life. And if it's not in alignment with your soul, you can peel back the layers and come back into alignment. And I feel that's what we're so afraid of, to change, especially our egos. They're so afraid of change. And then when we suddenly are there, it feels so natural and so free that I ask myself, like, why didn't I start this earlier? I was so afraid of moving to this place. I was so afraid of leaving my job because of all this existential fear. And then when I'm here living my purpose, I'm like, this feels so natural. It doesn't feel natural to live a 9-to-5 job or to live in a country my soul doesn't want to be in. And then when we're courageous enough, suddenly it becomes easy because the things align and it flows and we don't fight against our soul and our being.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I heard an analogy that kind of reminded me of what you said. And it reminds me of your situation where it was like, I don't know if I'm going to say it completely correctly, but there was like I think it was an actual experiment conducted. I could be wrong. But basically they put, like 2 gnats or like 2 flies like in a jar, and they kept them in this jar, and then they ended up having like more gnats, and they ended up like accumulating in the jar, right? So some of them were born like in this captivity. And what ended up happening is like they were in there for this like certain amount of time, that when they actually like took away the jar, like opened it, the flies just flew in that same space. Even though there was like freedom, there was nothing blocking them from leaving and seeing the world and living somewhere else. They just stuck to that space because that is all they knew. And it's so mind-blowing to me to think like there's so much out there that we don't know or that we can achieve, and we're just limiting ourselves by like the glass box and the confines that we grew up in. So insane. But that's, to your point, having a mentor, seeing what's possible for other people, seeing through somebody else, showing you your blind spots and your shadows and all those things, like where you might be holding yourself back, is completely life-changing.
Yeah. I love the picture with the flies. I didn't know this one. I just know the one. Do you know the ones they did with the grasshopper? They put,
yes.
and it's actually so metaphoric for us. So either we grow up in an environment where we can't grow, so we stay in this jar like the flies, or as children, we had this imagination. We wanted to be a rock star. We wanted to become like an astronaut, and we believed that because no one told us it's not possible. And then we grow up and everyone says, that's not possible. Like, stop dreaming. And we hit our heads. Like, they put the grasshoppers would fly out of the jar, and then they would put a lid on it, and they would jump, and they were like, I can do this. And then they would hit their head and they would be in pain. And then at one point they were like, okay, maybe I just stay here. Maybe it's really not possible. And when they took the lid off, they stayed. They just jumped as high as the lid. And that's exactly when mentorship comes in and says, look, there's a whole universe for you to explore. You don't have to stay there because you've been hurt. And I think that's the tricky part. If we had experiences that proved our belief system, if we tried and we failed and we just didn't get up again, or maybe we tried twice, but I feel all successful people, they hit rock bottom, they get back up, they fall again, they learn, they never give up. They never stop believing in their vision and their dream. And that's why it's so important, especially if you have a soul business like you do, and like I do, to be so deeply rooted in your power from the inside, and not to allow every obstacle to crush you on your knees. You get stronger every time, and maybe you can not fall on your knees again. You just, crumble a little bit, and then you get back up. It's a process.
Yeah. And I think too, I liked one of the points that you mentioned before, where that you said you were heart-led in what you were doing. And sometimes that might end up in you realizing, oh, this isn't what I want to do exactly. So then you realign yourself, right? Like you get back into alignment. And I think some people are afraid, like, well, what if I do this and I end up not liking it, or I end up failing and it doesn't work. And it's like, it's all part of the journey, right? It's more the experiences that you have, I think, where you fail help you so much more than we know, right? Like, especially with my singing career, like that was a situation where it seemed like, oh, I thought I was going to be this professional singer on an opera stage, and here I am actually doing something I'm in love with, and I'm taking so many of the skills that I've learned, not to mention I still sing. I actually have 2 singing gigs this month. So, I'm still doing that, but it's not the pressure of having to rely solely on that makes it like soul crushing, right? Like this path is just so much more abundant for my soul. It's so much safer. It's not that entrepreneurship's safe by any means, but I think when something just feels right for you, even if it's hard, like, that it's the path that you should be on, right? Like the path of alignment isn't always the path that's like the easiest path, right? Like if it's the easiest path, it probably isn't going to excite you. So of course, we want to get to where we want, with the least resistance as possible. Like, we're not fighting against the current, but it's still going to take bravery. Of course, it's still going to take courage. It's going to take leadership, every single day. But that also is how we grow. That is how we grow. So it's like, don't be afraid of, possibly it not working out, right? Because then you never know, right? It's like you'll never really know what you could have accomplished.
Yeah, and you don't also have to know all the answers. You figure it out by trying. We always think we have to know exactly how and when, and
Exactly.
I figured my path out by just trying and not having all the answers. When I wrote my book, I had no idea about writing, about publishing, about photography. It was a cookbook. I started in my kitchen with my phone, and I started growing as I did. And in the beginning, I was so proud. I took the pictures. And I was like, this is so beautiful. And now when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, how did I even think I could publish that?
Exactly. We kind of look back and we're like, wow. See, but like, thank God for that version of Tanya who decided she was ready to do it. Thank God, because now you're here and you're so proud of your work. And that's how I feel about me too. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of things that I put out into the world, both with my music and with, my work as a coach and a mentor, that I'm like, what was I thinking? But now I'm like, thank God for that version of me who decided like that she was ready and that she was going to do this. And I think that also kind of comes into play with not allowing external circumstances and validation to dictate our lives and who we are, right? Because if we waited for every time somebody said, oh yeah, you should definitely do that. Oh yeah, you're talented enough for this. Oh yeah, like we would never do what we want to do. We would move where we wanted to move if everyone approved of our decisions. Like it kind of goes full circle with my first answer to your question is like, that's freedom, is deciding who you are in this world and owning it.
Yeah, totally. And also to move through the fear of being seen and the fear of failure. I feel this is so big for so many that we think, oh my God, I have to do another course and then I'm ready. And then I have friends that have 100 trainings, but they never start because they think they first need to feel ready. But you feel ready by going out and just trying and allowing yourself to be seen, and even if it's not the most perfect thing. And if we see these, the women that have been doing it for many years and they already are so high, and you compare, of course, you never feel ready to start. But if you scroll down on their Instagram, you relate more to them because they also started somewhere. Nobody starts up here. We learn through failure. We learn through just trying, and some things stick and some things we realize maybe that's not my my way of doing it.
Because here's the thing too, at the end of the day, it's like failure doesn't mean anything about you. And that is where we stop ourselves, because we put so much weight on what would it mean if I failed? Like, and when we stop ourselves, when we have that fear of failure, it's because we truly are, we're tying who we are to the results that we get on the outside. And of course, I'm not saying that you'll get to a point where you're just like, nothing bothers you ever. Of course, we're human. We have feelings and emotions for a reason. However, I think, again, when you decide who you are and you know who you are and you value who you are and you love who you are, failure doesn't ever take away any of that failure, right? It doesn't take away. And that is why it is so much easier to be successful when you have that mindset, right? It's in relationships too. It's like, you know what you deserve. And so if somebody treats you a certain way, that isn't a reflection of who you are. That's a reflection of who they are. And you set the standard for how you are treated. You set the standard, and the more and more you own that, the more and more you own who you are, time after time after time. Like, maybe this didn't go as planned, but it doesn't become a story. Like, ooh, that kind of stings, but it doesn't actually mean anything about the person that I am, because I love who I am. I love my work. I'm proud of my work. Another example, if somebody asks you for a refund, that's like a huge fear, of somebody saying, I hated your program, it was terrible, I got nothing out of it, that kind of thing. And they're like, I want a refund immediately. It's like, yeah, that would really, really hurt if all your sense of value and self-worth was riding on other people's perception of you and acceptance of you. And in reality, that's just not realistic. And also, that's also, it truly, when you think about it, it's like, it doesn't really matter when again, who you are, your work has an impact. That your heart is aligned with, you're moving with your heart and you're doing the things that that you're meant to be doing. And that is why it is so important, like having this soul business, having this kind of soul connection to who you are and your work that you put out into the world. You are able to walk so much stronger. You are able to lead so much stronger. And it truly is like this magnetic quality that you can have. Like, people feel that when you have this heightened sense of self-love for yourself, well, of course, self-love for yourself, but when you have a strong sense of love for yourself, it is truly a magnetic thing. Like, it's something that people want to be around as well. When we really think about it in its most simple terms, it's like, at a basic level, it's what we all want. We all want to be loved. We want to be accepted. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. So you just need to do that for yourself first. Because you can be your own safety, your own love, your own acceptance, your own, like, we have the ability to give ourselves that. And having that foundation will just set yourself up for having the life of your dreams. I truly believe that.
Yes, amen to that. The feminine magnetism from wholeness. If you can find it within you, it doesn't even matter if it comes from the outside. Of course, we need food and we need money and we need people in our lives, but if you're whole and complete, everything is an add-on and it can come to you, and you're not like, please sign up because I need food and please come into my life because I don't know how to love myself.
Right. And I agree. I think
different energy.
I know. And I would, the thing with entrepreneurship too is like, I think, when you want to get to a place of basic need safety, you know what I mean? Like when you are in this line of work, because if you can, I'll say, and if that means taking on a side hustle, it's been done so many times just to make sure that like, of course, right off the bat of entrepreneurship, more times than not, you might have to sacrifice a few things. Like maybe you're not getting the exact meal that you want at the restaurant, whatever. But yes, exactly like you said, having that baseline of safety first, with as far as our needs. But I think what happens more times than not is we're used to feeling unsafe, like as our default, because of maybe some trauma, or our body's really trying to keep us safe, and and so we end up falsely protecting ourselves more than we really need to. Like thinking like if we're in the middle of a launch and it's not going right, it almost becomes like this life or death situation, because we feel humiliated, or we feel, if I don't get this money, well, I'm okay right now, but if I don't, then that means that I'm like going to be on the streets next month. And then we start like really making up these scenarios, right? Instead of like actually like living in the present of being like, am I safe? Do I have a roof over my head? Do I have food coming in? If we can answer those questions, then we're already like better than so much of the world, which I think is needed, right? Like getting into this line of work. But I think if you can get to that place, then you can start to really understand, like, why don't I feel safe right now? Like, is it because, again, like too, this all gets into like a fight or flight reaction, but like we've been conditioned to run away from lions, tigers, and bears. And like in these situations that are emotionally taxing, feel like we are getting chased by a bear. Right. And so when we can like really acknowledge, like, I am safe, like it is safe for me to be seen. Like you said, it's safe for me to be seen. It is safe for me to make money in this way. It is safe for me to be creative. It is safe for me to fail. I think that's a big one. I think it's huge to be able to say it is safe for me to try this and fail. Because I think the last thing I'll say about this, which I think is important, is like, there's like such a stigma about being a beginner sometimes. Like, it's like, of course, some people are like, oh my God, what is wrong with my energy? Like, what is wrong with my mindset? What is wrong with my messaging? Like nothing. And I'm like, no, like you're fine. Like, this is just normal. Like we just started. Like, of course, like it's going to take some time to get it. Like, like there's no shame. It's a shame of being like a beginner. It's a shame at trying something new, or it's just a shame at not being a complete expert at whether it be like launching or showing up on live. Like, of course, when you're doing something for like, and you haven't done it religiously every single day for years, yes, there's going to be times, and like, let's just like embrace being human. And I think like once you allow yourself to do that, oh, it's safe to be a beginner. Oh, it's safe to be new at something and learn. It's safe to learn. Oh my gosh. Okay. This is actually fun. I'm like, yes, this is where we go. This is where we can start playing, because then you're going to start taking more risks and being a little edgier and telling more stories and showing up and being seen more. Like, this is where we truly get to bloom and blossom.
Yes, so true. And we see it all the time, right? When you start a new hobby for the first time, if you go surfing,
yes,
no one can surf the wave in Tahiti, the big ones, when you start surfing. Like,
I know.
we see these people, it looks so easy, and then we feel like a piece of failure when we try, and then we get frustrated and we're like, this is not for me, and we sabotage it. But to have the patience and the allowance to fall and to get up again, and to watch children when they learn how to walk, like we don't say to them after the first time they fall, you're a failure, you will never learn how to walk.
Right. Yes, exactly. It's like, it's children this is so we have no shame around being a beginner. As babies, we don't have the concept of that yet. So it's like there's, my niece will walk around and fall and we'll all kind of be laughing at her, not, to be mean, but because it's so cute, and she kind of falls over and it's just funny. And it's like, but she doesn't, really process that yet. But it's like, but it's not like, oh, she's a terrible person because she fell. It's like, no, she's a freaking baby. It's like, of course. And like, she's just like, la, 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 like, I'll get back up and try again. Like, ha, 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 ha. Like, oh my God, imagine if we can approach it like that, of being
Right.
like, and now the fact that we're all adults and we're walking perfectly, and this is like a major skill that we like mastered at this one part of our lives. And it's so natural. We all take it for granted, but it's like, yeah, because we became a master, we became an expert, and now we can walk and we can run. And actually, you can be a gymnast if you want, and you can do all these crazy things because you're a capable person. It's like, oh, well, in order to do that, you have to learn how to walk. Right. So it's like, let's go back to that mentality of like, it is okay to be a beginner. There's no shame. Like, and it's just it's a beautiful journey. And it actually means something when you accomplish it. Right. So it really truly is like, that is how you take the resistance out of it, not making yourself wrong for every little piece of the puzzle that maybe doesn't go perfectly right. Like, right. Like just knowing that your timing is perfect. And that's actually how you're going to go faster. If that's what you desire, if you desire is like a quick transformation. Of course, we all want all of the things now. It's our human nature, but it's like, okay, you're going to have to be okay with it not being here now. That's the start. And once you can actually like embody that, then it's like, okay, you're feeling good. Okay, good. It really does come back to, how are you feeling? And that is why I always want to tap in with my clients. Like, how are you feeling? How are you feeling about you? How are you feeling about your work? That's the biggest thing. And that's kind of where we start. And then once from there, we can really start to play. And I always tell my clients, like, let's play, like, let's play, we can start to play with the messaging. We can start to play with like some of the strategies, which I love to do. But of course, I just want to know, like, the deeper issues are always the things that I think make the biggest, not the deeper issues, but like the things below the surface are always the things that really, really make the difference. Like the energy behind what we do is like, that's the game changer.
Yes. That's everything. Your energy. Everything. Even if you think you have all the strategy and you're doing everything right, if your energy is off, people can feel that subconsciously.
Yeah. It's like right. If you're not, yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Yeah, just that it's like a magnet. And I had this experience this year. So it's energy is everything. How you feel is everything. And that's why it's so important to be connected to that and to take care of yourself and to nurture yourself first. So you can serve from overflow and not from, I need this to feel good.
Yes, that is key. Yes, that is absolutely key. And it's like, it's going to make your life so much better, right? Because I'm all about the business and lifestyle elevation. Like for me, it's like if my clients are maybe making money in their business, but they're like completely unhappy in other aspects, I'm like, I didn't do my job. Like we need to actually go and see like what's going on all around, because once you have, once you rise as like the human, your business is going to rise. And guess what? That is actually sustainable. Like how many times have people been doing things like in a complete incongruent way, and they get to a point where they're like, I'm burnt out. I absolutely cannot sustain this anymore. And it's like, they do all of that only to find that they are completely unhappy and want to burn it to the ground. So it's like, as soon as we can get to that place where we feel really, really good about what we're doing, about ourselves, about our lives and the direction that it's going, like of course, it's not like everything needs to be perfect for things to work. No, that's not what it is. But even like I said, the smallest things, like what is something that you can find today about yourself that you like, or like, can you at least come to a neutral place about it's not even that what you like more so than it is what you know is true, right? Because I'm not trying to put like fake positivity in here in the mix, like, oh yeah, just tell yourself you like yourself if you're feeling terrible. It's not that. It's really finding like the truth of who you are, the actual truth of who you are. And sometimes that takes like the smallest, simplest thing, like I said, like that you just know, like, okay, this is actually true, like about me that I really like, or like I know that I'm really, really good at this one thing and I'm really proud of that. Right. So it's just like getting in, and with our businesses, if you're feeling really, really discouraged about your business, what I would say, again, like if you've had a launch that didn't go, or you haven't sold something in a little while, or you're just, you have put a new offer out, I would just say, go back to what it is that's true about your business that, brings you back to a place of knowing why you started this in the first place, right? Of knowing why it is that you're doing what you're doing. Like, can you go back to that truth? Like, go back to someone you've helped and that that you've changed their lives, right? So that is the abundance, the overflow of which we can grow. It can be something so small.
Yes, so true. Every word you just shared. Thank you so much for this conversation, Kristina. I have one last question that I ask all of my podcast guests, and I invite you to close your eyes for this one.
Okay.
And I want you to imagine you could travel back in time and you could meet yourself at a younger age. And it doesn't matter what age pops up intuitively. If you could tell her a message that you've learned along your way that you now that would have made your journey a lot easier, what would you tell her?
Oh my gosh, I can think of a few times. I think I would go back to myself in high school. And I would tell myself that you are worthy and you are enough just as you are. You don't need to try so hard. Things are going to work out better than you could ever imagine. And the little stuff doesn't matter. Focus on what feels really true, even if it doesn't make logical sense. Go with the joy.
I could feel that.
I was picturing talking to her.
So how can people connect with you, work with you, find your magic?
Yes. Oh my gosh, this has been so great. Well, so I'm a business and leadership, feminine leadership coach. I help women grow their businesses on a holistic level. So all of the things that I teach and preach and coach through and mentor through are going to be strategies that feel aligned to you, and also the energy, the energetics, and just the holistic mentality of growing not only the business, but growing as the person. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can find me on Instagram. It's at Kristina Parks _. And that's probably the best. I also have TikTok as well with the same hashtag. The same handle. So those are my links, and feel free to send me a message if you feel called. I love to talk to people in my community.
I will link it in the show notes too. Thank you so much for your time and for your beautiful energy today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Tanya. This is wonderful.